Hey everyone, good day. This is fantastic. It has come time for another CG Zest Wellness webinar, which myself, Nathan, from the CG Zest Wellness team, as well as Tyler here, are just super excited. Even over the past few days, we saw everybody registering and we saw the promotions going out through email, through social media, and so it's fantastic to now be able to deliver this webinar. And so we're always thinking, hey, how can we create different types of health topics and really see things from a different perspective when it comes to being our best selves and living a healthy lifestyle, which the CG Zest Wellness program advocates for. And so today's webinar is all about healthy workspaces. And if this sounds different to you or sounds new or unique and novel, then we know Tyler and I have done for sure, we've done our job. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to begin showing the different slides, and then Tyler will come on in, introduce himself, and continue with the content on the different slides that we have here. And so again, welcome to Healthy Workspaces, our webinar for today. And so let's prepare, right? Let's get our minds focused right now. And let's look at this slide as we have three different parts to our preparation here. And so first, let's reflect right now. Let's see for you, from an individual perspective, what environment helps you be your best you? Is it that you might have, background music going on? Is it that you're surrounded by certain people? Is it that there's certain types of artwork on the walls, or are you feeling something? Do you have comfy socks on? It could be anything, but think about it. What type of environment, what are you surrounded by that helps you be the best you, right? So it's your environment around you. Think about what really invigorates you. There's a lot of greenery as well. And so that's our first part as we prepare, is to reflect. The second part here is we're going to add a little bit of math here, and it's all evidence-based, as you can see by the reference here. And so you can actually calculate what's called your indoor age. And this is important because we spend so much of our time indoors, right? Upwards of 90% of our time indoors. So if you think about it, for someone who's 40 years of age, so 40 times 0.9, they spent 36 years of their life indoors, right? 90% of our time indoors. And then even further to that, we spent up to 1/3 of our waking hours working. So, whether it's at the workplace, the work site, or overall just at your workspace in general. And then let's define some stuff, right? Because with the environment, and if we can, advocate for more stair usage or certain types of lighting or the temperature and whatnot, these are things that are accessible to everyone because the structure is designed like that around us. So it's making the healthy choice the easy choice. So by having healthy workplaces, it's not about, hey, you have to register for the healthy workplace. It's that by default, if your workplace or your workspace is healthy, if it's designed that way, we're really nudging positive behaviors without individuals actually maybe even knowing that they're doing it, which is the goal, right? Make it nice and easy, the healthy choice, the easy choice. And then we just want to define one more term here before Tyler comes in, is the whole idea of physical activity. And so when we think about movement, we think, okay, I didn't apply too much movement today because I wasn't able to get to the gym or participate on a certain sports team and whatnot. But what we want to just clarify here before we get into the content is that physical activity can be different from exercise. And so exercise is a type of physical activity, but what we're really after is physical activity, movement, walking, gardening, doing laundry. These are all types of things that overall get your heart rate up. And so even if exercising yesterday, today, tomorrow, in the future might be more difficult, because of timing and whatnot or resources, we can still try to apply some physical activity in our life. And that's exactly what healthy workspaces can allow us to do. So healthy workplace, healthy work site overall can make a healthy workspace. So with that said, we prepared, we reflected, we calculated, and we defined some terms. And so here we are with Tyler, who's going to continue on with our slides.
All right. Thank you, Nathan. Well, I mean, even just to look at that fact right at the beginning here, with 90% of our time spent indoors, I think this is the big reason why we're putting on this webinar today, is to see how we can improve our built environments. And either through design or through a practice or a policy or a procedure, something that we can put into our place, a program even, that we can add to our everyday life in the workspace that we're in, that will help improve it. So as Nathan introduced me, my name is Tyler, and I have the honor of introducing some of the concepts today that will hopefully help to improve your workspace. A little housekeeping, I guess, if you will, for the beginning. I really encourage you during this webinar to use the chat box to the right of your screen there. I'll have a few questions. I want you to be involved as well. I don't need to talk through all of it. I would love to have your input. So it would be great when I have a few questions for some of these concepts to get your input. I'd love to hear what you have to say and your experience from your workspaces. And also just a little background as well. Where are we getting this information from? So you'll see at the bottom of pretty much every slide, sourced from Well Certified or adapted from Well Certified. So what is this, or who are they? Well, this is the International Wellbeing Building Institute, okay? And it administers a well building standard. So they pull together all these concepts, and they have all of these experts from different fields: medicine, science, design, engineering, right? And they've all collaborated together to come up with these different types of things that can help our environment and help improve our health through our built environments. And so without further ado, okay, we're going to move into the first slide here. All right, there we go, perfect. So the first concept is the concept of mind. We thought that this is no better place to start, right? Our built environments can affect us in positive ways and in negative ways, and definitely has an impact on our mental health. So we're going to look at a few different programs that can help with improving this concept, and also a couple practices as well that we can put into place. Okay? So I just want to start with a little quote from the World Health Organization to really highlight mental health. Okay, so it's not simply the absence of a mental health condition, but rather a state of well-being in which individuals are able to live to their fullest potential, cope with the normal stresses of life, work productively, and contribute to their community. So it's not just, do I have a mental health condition or do I not, but it's a whole lot more. And putting these different parts of our built environment and programs into place can really help to progress this. Okay. All right, so a couple more facts. And I'm not going to read through every single one, but just a few glaring ones here too. Is a lot of the times, even up to half of the time in high income countries, we don't even address mental health conditions, and they receive no care or treatment at all. So being able to put these things into place can really help mitigate these adverse effects. So let's start kind of with the actionable items through programs. And hopefully you'll be familiar with some of these programs. And again, won't go through every single one, but I think the first one that's very important to highlight is what we're doing right now. So having ongoing webinars. For today, we're doing healthy workspaces, but there could be webinars for mental health to educate all of the people in the workspace on what we can do to improve this part of our workspace. Okay? Also, mindful programs. CG just put on a mindful leader program with Michael Apollo to help leaders lead in the workspace with their colleagues. And also some cessation programs you see in the VP app. Right? So these are things that can help you take a journey through improving your mental health in this area. So these are some different programs that we can put in place. For design, have a look at the picture that you see in your screen right here. You see lots of foliage, right? Trees, and I think I see some ferns there. So we might not be able to put a tree into our workspace, but we can put a plant, right? I have one right here on my desk, actually, to add some natural elements into our workspace. Okay? If we're not able to have plants in the workspace, we can add cultural elements, okay, parts of the community, an integration of art that Nathan mentioned earlier too. Having that in your workspace can really do wonders with your mind. And so these are all kind of things that we can kind of look at adding that will improve the mental health in the workspace. So I mentioned earlier here, I want some feedback from you as well. So I'm putting these concepts beside each other, the programs and the design. And I want to think, are there any examples that are true for you in the workspace? What elements do you believe are important to fostering positive mental health? So again, I'll encourage you over here. Hello. Our little chat box, you can see me there. If you have an idea of what you think is really helpful for you, or you can think of one of these concepts that you see every day in your workspace, I encourage you to pop it into the chat box. I'd love to get some feedback. Of course, don't need to, we have lots of answers here, but again, it's all about collaborating together here today, so I'd like to hear what you have to say too. So if you have 10 seconds or 20 seconds, feel free. I'll have a sip of water.
And Tyler, I can even start us off on this one, in that some individuals, they really find so much peace in having photos of family members in their workspace, or photos of significant others in their workspace, right on the wall by their desk and whatnot, to help them not only get through the day, but thrive through the day well, and remember what they're working for, and it's always keeping that top of mind, their loved ones.
Nice, nice. Yeah, another one I can think of too is to do with design. Is an old building that I worked in, was at the base of the building. They had I guess a little, not a garden, but a little space where it had a gate, and you could walk down, go out into the entrance, and you could go through the gate. And there's stones to walk on, some bigger stones to sit on. There was bushes and flowers, and I found myself more often than not each day just walking out of the building, which encouraged movement as well, and just going into that space and sitting there and just closing my eyes for a few minutes and resetting before I had to go to the next meeting or do a new task or sit in front of the computer again for a long period. So having that worked into my workspace was really beneficial for me. All right, so no takers on the comments in the chat box yet, but again, there'll be more opportunities for that. So let's move into our next concept. All right, air, okay, is our next concept. Okay, so really having good quality of air. Again, looking at the picture there, you see lots of open space. Okay, people are spaced out, high ceilings, great ventilation system. It just looks like nice, clean air that we want to have in our workspace. Okay? So let's lay down some of the facts, though. I think we already touched on it at the beginning, and there's a reason why I brought up that 90%. Okay? So why should we have good air in our workspace? We spend a lot of our time inside, whether it's our work, our home, school, restaurants, wherever we go, a lot of the times we're indoors. So having air quality that's as close to outside, inside is really important. Okay? And what are some things that can affect our air inside as well? So another thing to look at. So thinking about cleaning products, building materials, and even air fresheners. I know for me, I can't have an air freshener in my car. It gives me a bit of a headache. Right? I'd rather just put down the window, right, and breathe the air itself. That's a good way to freshen the air in my car. Even in Canada, when it's cold and it's the winter time, just putting it down for a second does more wonders for me than an air freshener ever will. And what does it cause? I mean, these things can cause acute problems like the headache I just mentioned, or even long-term effects. If we're using building materials that aren't very high quality, right, this can cause respiratory issues, right? So knowing what you're doing, this could be in your personal space when you're upgrading something in your home, okay, or in the workspace as well for your employer, what kind of materials they're using. Okay, so air is a big one. And I think it's one that we kind of touched on automatically over the last year and a half, almost 2 years, and it's this concept of air and COVID-19. All right, so hate to always touch on this subject, but it's a really important one to look at because we really made some adjustments in our life to create better air quality in order to limit the risk of spread. So some things we've done, obviously social distancing, so keeping our space. In your workspace, do you have enough space? Are you crammed next to each other when you're working? Or do you have the ability to move to different parts of your office where there's space available for you? Masks is another big one. So I know very common in a lot of workspaces, even before this pandemic, was if you have a bit of a cold, but you feel okay to go to work, was putting a mask on just to be considerate of your colleagues when you go in and not spreading your own germs. So again, protecting the air of others is a big one. And then again, like we're doing right now, Nathan and I, working remotely, right? So having the option to be out of the office. Gathering limits, and encouragement of outdoor activities. So again, getting the best air possible by doing exercise outdoors. All right, so what can be done in our workspace to improve air? We're gonna kind of look at it from 2 points of view here. A professional one that maybe ourselves we can't do too much of, but something that the WELL standards look at, and personal for us. So the first one is what they do for WELL standards. So they have actual professionals coming in measuring such things as PM 2.5, the ventilation design, HVAC systems. That's not something that we can do. We're not professionals in those fields, but some things that we can do. And hopefully I think the first one is one that everybody does, is ensure a smoke-free environment. I think we've come a long way with that, and that's the case for most. But some other things that maybe aren't as looked at that you can consider in your workspace is providing access to outdoor air through window accessibility. So maybe even if you aren't near a window in your office, there's an opportunity to find that space, to go to it, or even rotate seats, having a hot seat in your office. All right, and then managing any makeovers. We mentioned construction materials before. I can tell you firsthand, I renovated a room in the spring and did some drywalling and decided to tackle that myself. And that dust will get everywhere, even if you have the best intentions of sealing off doorways with plastic and using tape. So it's important if you are making those changes yourself, or your employer is making those changes, that we do it in the right way, right? So we're not spreading any of that material dust to other areas. And the last one, of course, introducing air filters or purifiers in the workspace. This is something that we can do quite easily. They can be purchased online or wherever you get these things. But having those in space, especially for places that maybe don't have the best outdoor air quality, in cities with pollution, right, is having air filters and purifiers that really help in this area. So these are all kind of small things that we can consider when improving the air in our workspace. All right, so let's move on. Our next concept. Let's have a look at this large picture here. Again, I encourage you, just one word in the chat box. What do you think of when you see this picture? What do you see, right? Besides the word light, which is the concept. Nathan, what do you think? What do you see there?
For sure, when we were looking at this, it's brightness, right? It's the idea of, we're not, having to necessarily squint our eyes too much and try to focus that much more because of darkness, and so brightness, which goes with light.
Definitely, right. Yeah, so brightness, another word, lux, right? The amount of luminance we see, okay? Yes, windows, natural light. Okay? All of these things are really important to incorporate into our workspace. And why is that? You kind of see the three smaller pictures here, okay? Light is the main driver to our internal clock. So you see the little picture with the moon and the sun and the clock, and in the middle it says circadian rhythms. All right, so having that exposure to natural light throughout the day leads to the second picture here, better productivity, and the third picture here at the end of the day, better sleep. And conversely, in the evening is not getting too much light. Always here to kind of dim the lights down and prepare for sleep, right? So not being overexposed to all of your lights, or even worse, your phone, right, with the blue light, okay, in the evening. It can really have a negative impact on your sleeping patterns. So getting this amount of light is really important in our workspace. Okay?
And natural light at that, like you're mentioning, Tyler, from the sun, and doing that through windows and whatnot.
For sure, for sure. And then you can see here in the next slide, right? We have the same picture that I just showed you with all this natural light, and another picture of looks like a cafe. It's nighttime in front of your computer screen. Like, which one do you feel that you would be more productive and alert in? The first one, obviously, right? Right. So these kinds of things, having the right environment to achieve, productivity is very important. Okay? So, are we getting enough light in our workspace? And what questions can you ask? So, I'm going to give you 5 questions here to take away, right? To consider when going back to your workspace. Okay? So, the first one, okay, lux. Okay, what is it? What's the appropriate amount we should be getting, and how can we measure it? So it's the measure of luminance, right? The well standard has it set at between 2 and 320 for the appropriate amount of light we should be getting. This could be in a gym or in your workspace. We can measure it through simple little tools. Again, you can buy them online. You can just hold it up to a lamp and it will give you a reading. Right, but this is kind of a more technical approach to understanding how much light we should be getting, but one that we can easily achieve through simple tool purchase. Second one, is any lights in the workspace that flicker or need to be replaced? So next time you walk into the office, look up. Right? Are there any lights that are burnt out near where you're working? Do they need to be replaced? Maybe it's a little too dim where you're working, and as Nathan mentioned before, you're squinting or glaring at a document, right? That can cause headaches or just cause productivity issues in the day. Right? Another one that's even worse is a flickering light. Right? It can really lead to distractions and needs to be replaced immediately. So looking up in your workspace and making sure that those are all on and equally distributed throughout your workspace. So the next one too is, do I get any headaches or do my eyes feel sore from too little or too much light? So maybe there's a high glare in your office, and too much light causes a lot of reflection off of the surfaces in your office. Or again, there's not enough light and you're doing the same thing, looking at your documents and having issues reading things that can cause headaches by the end of the day. So just making those adjustments can make a big difference in your health in your workspace. All right, the next one, the big one for my office actually. Do the walls in my office reflect light? So my office here, they're not quite white. I don't want to call it maybe a eggshell white. The ceiling is white. Okay, the walls are close to it, but when there's a lot of sun, which is facing south, my window, in this office, it reflects a lot of light, and I don't know, when the sun comes out in full, I feel more alert and awake, just like that, as if someone turned the light on themselves. So in your office, are the walls reflecting light properly? Or do you have very, very dark walls that are absorbing too much light? So things to consider too in your workspace. And the last one I just mentioned, am I within a few meters of windows that allow that natural light? I think that's a big one too. And if not, what can we do? Right? If it's an office space, can we share seating? Right? Can we rotate? Can we move around? Or can you have access to it on the same floor? Are you able to walk to this area to get some natural light throughout the day? So lots of questions that you can take with you. And when you go back to the office, kind of look around and consider these things and what ways we can make improvements. Okay, so we've got enough light and hopefully we have nice air quality. And now let's check our temperature. So answer this for yourself in your room right now. Is the temperature too hot? Or is it too cold? Or are we in the Goldilocks zone? Is it just right? So all things to consider in the workspace. We have a picture here of sitting at home and being totally comfortable and happy with your environment. Really, really important in the workspace. But oftentimes we don't have control over this. So how can we get back control of this environment? And also, it's not always where my too cold or your too cold is the same. So a good example of this is in my home. My too cold is a lot lower than my mother's too cold. I like to keep my house around 19 degrees. So when I have my mother and father over for dinner, oftentimes my mom is shivering. Oh, it's too cold in here. Tyler, turn up the heat, right? Whereas when I go over to her house, she likes it to be 24 or 25. So if I'm having dinner there, I always prepare to have a t-shirt on so I can take my sweater off, or I'm sitting at dinner wiping my head. Yeah, so there's big differences, and that's okay, right? So what can we do in our work environments, especially when we're sharing one, that can kind of help all the individuals to achieve what they want from their thermal environment? So we're going to look at a few different approaches here, okay, for the thermal environment. Okay, we're going to look at the space, and we're going to look at the individual. Okay, so what can we do for the space first? All right, so a few things here. Again, WELL has kind of set goalposts for nothing below 17 and nothing above 26. But of course, for me, 26 is quite warm. Okay? And I'm sure for a lot of you, 17 is quite cold. All right? So that's one place to start with the space. But also what we can do is have zones in our workspace. So maybe certain areas, dedicated areas, are for zones that are above 23, and other areas where it's between 19 and 23. But setting these up are really important to having most of the individuals, if not all, in the workspace to be happy with the thermal environment. But how can we get that feedback? So let's look at the individual. One thing that even I stumbled across in this webinar research was a survey. Having something for occupants in the building that you work in, that they can give feedback once or twice a year, right? That actually lets the building maintenance know, or the employer know that, okay, it's too cold in here, or it's too hot, right? Being able to get that feedback from the people that actually work there is vitally important. So if that's not something that that you currently do, and it is an issue, then maybe that's something that could be passed along, okay, as a way to solve, okay, our thermal comfort issues in the workspace. Other thing is just having personal little items that can help. Okay, so for Nathan and I up in Canada, maybe a heater, a little space heater is a better option for us. But maybe down in the Caribbean, a little desk fan to cool you off. having those things available in your office can help for each individual. And another one is just flexible dress code. And so I remember working in a city where it was very hot and very humid in the summer, but the dress code was always shirt and tie, no matter what, no exceptions. Right? So when it got to 40, 45 degrees in the summertime, and I'm walking from the subway to the workspace, it was hot, and I would come in and I'd be miserable, and I just wanted to wear a polo shirt, right? In that time of year, right? I didn't mind wearing a shirt and tie, but a little flexibility goes a long way. So a flexible dress code, a policy that can be put in place is a big one, right? Whether it be just a t-shirt or in the winter, putting on a sweater, if you're in those types of environments like we are here. But just giving that flexibility to employees is a big one here.
And Tyler, I'll emphasize your point for everyone on the idea of the survey, because you mentioned like building maintenance staff. And
Yeah.
so, because I know I'm sure there's also a couple of like wellness champions on this webinar. And so it could very well be that for an initiative for a month or a quarter, it's a matter of sending out a survey, like Tyler mentioned, about asking individuals, hey, for something like thermal comfort, do you have any thoughts? How would you rate this? And then taking that information and learning from it, and then coordinating with how Tyler mentioned your building maintenance staff and sharing that with them to see if they can do anything. So it's kind of bridging the gap between wellness, and then also now we're adding stakeholders like building maintenance staff to the wellness programming.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I think those are all great approaches. And I know we've all come across it before, especially that with wearing too much in a hot environment can really hinder your productivity in the workspace. All right, so let's move on. Now that we're comfortable and hopefully have enough light and enough fresh air, okay, and we're ready for lunch, so we're going to leave the workspace. Okay, so we're all very aware, okay, of how diets are linked to our overall health. It's one of the biggest topics we cover, right? Nutrition, okay, and movement. And so for this one here, it's really just about, Nathan said at the beginning, making the healthiest option the easiest option. So there's a few things that employers can do to improve this concept in the workspace. And it's really just about helping us make informed decisions, okay, through nutritional transparency. So giving us access and availability to fruits or vegetables, or education on what's the good thing that you can eat that will improve your activity and your life in the workspace. Okay. So how can this be accomplished? And so one approach that an employer can take, or two actually, is just the amount of food that's available and what kinds of food is available. So at least 50%, this is a prerequisite for the WELL standard of the workspace, is a fruit or non-fried vegetable of at least 2 varieties. Okay? And the second one is just signing and packaging, letting employees know what they're eating. Okay? How much protein, fat, carbs, sugar content is a big one. So again, educational awareness of the food that you're consuming in the workspace. And if you're eating at home, and again in the workspace too, these are some other approaches that we can take as well. So a few here. Again, for your grocery list, limiting the availability of foods with sugar in them is something that we can do if we are working remotely, okay, being aware of this. And again, for the employer, okay, to provide for employees is on-site virtual cooking classes. I know right now at CG Atlantic, okay, we had visit one of our vendors, right, and cook a healthy meal if you look on our Instagram or Facebook. Okay, so one of these things is really important, okay, is education. Portion size education as well. That's part of our VP app. You can do that as a healthy habit for a week. And so all of these things here can really help us with just getting more awareness when it comes to our nutritional health. And again, to go back to the built environment, if you do have restaurants or cafeterias in your building, is having a space to eat with a variety of seating options, natural light, right, space, okay, good air quality. All of these things really tie into one another, right? Another personal experience of having a little place to eat my lunch at one of my old employers was the staff room was kind of tucked away behind a stairwell, and it didn't have windows in it, and it was just a place that I didn't really feel great about bringing my lunch and sitting in there with no windows and under the stairs, and just being able to change up that environment, having a place you want to sit and eat, not just by yourself, but with your colleagues, and enjoy that place is a big one to consider for the built environment, maybe for the employer.
It's to your point, Tyler. It's certainly hard to eat healthy when we don't necessarily have you know an awesome and sometimes fun place to eat and have coworkers eat with us. As basic as that sounds, it's a really powerful point.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, so moving on to our next concept, water. So we have a healthy plate of food. Okay, we've learned a few different ways that we can approach this concept, but now we need a tall glass of water, which I have with me right here. Okay, and we need to wash down that healthy meal, okay, with this next concept. So a few fun facts, okay, about water. So we're made up of nearly 2/3 of it. I'm sure we've all heard this one before. Okay, it is recommended that we take anywhere between 2 and 3.7 liters a day. These will always vary. Okay, so we kept it pretty wide for that reason, but definitely this area for us to stay properly hydrated. It's used in heating and cooling systems. It carries away our waste. It aids us in proper hygiene, right? Washing our hands. And not just for drinking, but it helps us in lots of other ways as well. And we'll look at that when it comes to the design, okay, of using water in our buildings. So without a doubt, yes, it plays an important role in our everyday lives. So we're going to look at a few different concepts here for both drinking water and for hygiene when it comes to this concept. So just at the bottom here, we can kind of see the concept here for water. It's to promote adequate hydration for building users, as well as reduce risks of water contaminants and providing subtle means of sanitation through quality design and operations. Okay, so let's have a look at these designs and operations that we can put in our workspace. Okay, so the first one, drinking water. So just having it available for us. Maybe we can't measure the quality of the water. We can leave that to professionals. This is another thing that's included in the WELL standard. But what we can do is promote hydration. We can have water accessibility. It shouldn't be any further than 30 meters away from you in the office space. And it should also be able to fill your water bottles as well. So not just for little cups, or we want to promote sustainability too. So being able to use your water bottles to fill up, okay, for drinking water. And for hygiene, okay? So those dispensers that we're getting water from, okay, are they cleaned daily? Where are they coming from? And for maybe this is again more for building maintenance, okay, or for the employer, but reducing touch points. Okay, so hands-free flushing, okay, sensor-activated faucets, especially in the times we live in today. This is more pertinent than ever, right? Is having those types of designs in your buildings. This might be not something that we can affect ourselves today, but something that can be talked about with key stakeholders in your workspace. Okay, great. So we're moving right along. We've gone through 6 concepts already, and we're moving into the next one, sound. So we finish our meal, we have a nice big glass of water, and we're moving back to our office space, and we hear plop, 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 club. So this is definitely another personal experience of mine in one of my old workspaces was the footfall in the workspace. So anybody that wore dress shoes with kind of a wooden heel, right, or high heels would create this knocking sound on the ceramic tiles in our office. So if you're sat at your desk, which is pretty much open space for the most part, you would hear this constantly throughout the day. There's a lot of foot traffic. So it really hindered productivity, right? When I was trying to sit at my desk and focus on some deep work, okay, it was difficult to do so. All right, so how does sound shape our experience, right? It has a big effect on us. And we're gonna look at a few different questions that address this and what we can do. Okay, so what noises affect our workspace? Besides the footfall, what other things can we think of that affect us? Maybe Nathan, you can share a few things that affect you or have affected you in the past.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's one thing going from a workspace that, you're with colleagues, there's individuals all around you, and so therefore there's sound around you and noise, to then, you know, not having roommates, not having coworkers around you, and there's no sound. And so just the two different scenarios, I think, nothing's good or bad by any means, but the two different scenarios require, okay, if there's too much sound, what can we do? What can we do? But then if there's no sound, and how that might be something that makes it more, makes it tougher to be productive, what can we do? And so if there's no sound, whether it's perhaps, turning a TV on in the background, turning a fan on, and getting some of that background noise going, because for sure, Ty, it's one of those things where it's the sound can affect your productivity.
For sure, and that's kind of a point we make right here, is the absence of sound sometimes too quiet, right? So what can you put, what kind of sounds can you add to your environment that will help with your productivity? Right? So some noises first, and then we'll cover some things that we can do to help with sound masking as well. So some other noises, right? Outside disturbances, traffic or construction. And this might be out of our control, right? But these are things too that can have adverse effects over time if there's continuous construction outside, jackhammers. I actually remember working in a building where they're building a whole new office building next to us, and for months and months, I could only hear jackhammering at certain times of day, to the point where I went away on holiday to a nice quiet place, an island, and I would wake up at the same time every day to this kind of jarring jackhammering in my mind, to the point where I felt like I almost had PTSD from construction, right? So sound can definitely affect you over time, and you don't even realize it. So this is a big one too to consider. Another one in another building was the mechanical floor. So we were on the third floor of a very tall building, but the second floor was entirely a maintenance floor. So you would feel the hum and the buzz of all the things that control the heating and everything in the building below your feet. So again, kind of affect you at certain times of day. And of course, the big one, occupants. Of course, not their fault, right? It's more of the design of the building, but you're overhearing conversations, right? Background levels are maybe a little too loud, and this can affect productivity too. So what can we do to improve that, right? So we can all be productive in the workspace. So I think I mentioned a lot of the effects already. Yes, Nathan?
Yeah, and like you mentioned, just to highlight the key word you said a few moments ago was to get into, to finish and accomplish, deep work, right? So it's like you might have your tasks that, okay, it's okay to have a little bit of background noise or lack thereof here or there, but yeah, to your point about when you have to do, deep work or really problem solve something complex, that's when the for sound to be suitable for you, like matters the most for deep work.
Absolutely, yeah. And as we just mentioned, those can all have an effect on this productivity and focus, as I'm revealing here in the slide, and just dissatisfied occupants too. So you kind of go home from work disgruntled a bit about, oh, I didn't get that work done because such and such a factor, right? And being able to eliminate these kinds of things can go a long way to happier, satisfied occupants of the building, and occupants that have finished their work by the time they go home and leaving that work at work. So what can we do? So today, again, it's all about what kind of things can we change with our environment to help us and to improve each of these concepts and improve our overall health. So the first one, okay, sound mapping. This is a very simple nudge that we can add to our environment where we establish different zones. Right? This zone is for collaboration and presentations. This zone is for loud noises, so maybe it's social spaces where you don't need to worry about interrupting others. Another zone for quiet spaces, for relaxation, restoration, privacy, right? A place to reset. So just labeling these areas and having everyone aware. Barriers, so either absorptive materials, or if you look in the picture on the left, we have these little pods. A lot of offices have these built right into the exterior walls, right? But a place where you can go and have a private conversation or meet with a client, or like Nathan just said, get some deep work done, where once you go to that little pod, people know maybe not to disturb you. A very simple thing that happens a lot in the workspace is, do you have a minute? Do you have a minute? So going to one of these little areas and letting everyone know that when you're in there that you're doing this work can really help to skirt that issue of not having to always say no or always saying yes to, do you have a minute? And then a few other ones as well. It's just the kind of materials that we're using. I mentioned the ceramic floors before. Okay, so having more of a material on the floor that will absorb that sound. And sound masking. Okay, so we said if it's too quiet, maybe go into a hotel lobby, right? You'll hear background noise. You'll have a little bit of music, which is kind of necessary for that type of environment. And so all things to consider and to improving your environment when it comes to sound. Okay, so moving right along, okay? So just like earlier with nourishment, okay, we all know how important moving our bodies is to our overall health. Okay, so this next one, we're gonna, just like with the mind, look at some programs and look at the design of our buildings, design of our homes that can promote physical activity. So it can become a natural occurring everyday action rather than something you have to do. So this is a big one that we focus on, CG as well. So some programs, and hopefully you're familiar with some of these programs as well. A big one is tech integration, right? So fitness trackers, the VP app, so using these to track your steps or do challenges, right? Implementing this into your everyday life can really help with getting you moving. Right? Another one, our perks program, working with vendors, taking in a yoga class, doing a virtual HIIT class, right? Doing these different things that are kind of incorporated into your day, into your work day, that can really help with moving your body. And then I think I mentioned it with mind is having access to green space or blue space or field, something that's different than the office, that's within a few hundred meters, where you can take a time out or even have a walking meeting, right? You can go out to this space and walk and move and then come back to the space refreshed and ready to go, or it's kind of worked into your day. So these are some different programs that we can put into place. And then for design, workstations, right? So giving different types of workstations for the individual. Right now, I'm sitting, right? I'm okay with sitting for a certain amount of time. Or Nathan, he chose to stand, right? So having this option in our workspace is really important. I like to stand as well, okay? But being able to do both is fantastic, right? So ergonomic workstations built into our work environments are really important to our overall health. And then just having access to pedestrian-friendly streets, right? Places where we can walk, access to maybe a bicycle network or bicycle parking. That was a big one in one of my old employer's buildings, is if you took your bike to the office, you could park your bike for free. I thought that was a really nice perk. Okay, I could put it in the B1 of the building. But if you took your car, it was astronomically high to park your car in that building. So oftentimes, if I'm within 10 kilometers of the workspace, I will be biking in the morning, which would really help with moving my body every day if I'm going to be sat in the office for an extended period of time. It's good to have that at the beginning and the end of the day. So another way we can move our body, so just the design of our work environments. All right, so we've gone through 8 different concepts and how to improve our workspaces. I'm going to hand it back over to Nathan so he can share with us how we can kind of pull this all together and bring it back into our workspace and apply it. So Nathan, go ahead.
For sure, Tyler. And I was even just thinking as you were showing these slides on movement that one of the most fun initiatives that I've seen as far as clients and how they kind of act on this concept of movement is even letting employees know for the office workspace that, hey, if you take a walk during a certain route, it's going to take approximately 10 minutes, 20 minutes, a half hour. So kind of labeling the timing of different walking routes. And then someone can also do that with if they're working from home as well. And the home is their workspace where they're kind of logging and labeling, okay, if I go this way or this way, I know that's 10 minutes, I know that's 20 minutes, and then you're that much more prepared for when you take breaks or like integrating this into your workday. So, it's one of those things, one of the themes of this webinar, small things, but they make big changes, big effects. What we're going to do as we wrap up here is share a few more slides that are all about, as Tyler mentioned, integrating these things and making it come to life. And so as Tyler was going through the different concepts, one of the groups of stakeholders we had a little bit of conversation with already is health and safety, right? So I'm sure for each of you, your employer has a health and safety committee. And so it's our goal for this webinar, is one of our takeaways for wellness planning and initiatives or whatever might be going on with wellness for your organization and your possible involvement with wellness, for that to be integrated with those individuals on the health and safety committees as well. That way we're really creating a culture of health and safety. Because you can see here, it's one of those things by the upside down pyramid, which is called the hierarchy of controls, is that when we're trying to like help employees or even help ourselves, ideally we want to eliminate a problem if there is a problem, right? If we can't eliminate it, next we want to substitute. And then lastly, we want to encourage, personal change. But first and foremost, if we can eliminate a problem, altogether and whatnot, that's our goal, right? And so that's what healthy workspaces can help us do. And so here's some pointers on the slide as well for when you're having conversations with different health and safety committee members, that here are some things to indeed do. Everything from ensuring employees, right, when they're onboarded, that they receive the appropriate, health and safety training, to, okay, or do employees provide input to health and safety? Is everyone's voice heard? And so these are things that really matter. And again, they just complement everything that happens with healthy workspaces. Because even a part of healthy workspaces too, can be, think about it as, do I feel safe in my workplace, the security of my workspace? So that's what we wanted to just emphasize as we start to wrap up this webinar, is when wellness meets health and safety, that is definitely something for sure that we want. And what we'd like to also share with this webinar is 2 calls to action for everyone. So if you're listening to this and you said, hey, you know what, I'm listening to Nathan and Tyler here. This sounds really interesting. Perhaps for my employer, them and other members of the CG Zest Wellness team can kind of give us an audit of our workspace and give us some practical recommendations. And so we can certainly do that. So no matter which jurisdiction you're at and tuning into this from, is that we have wellness team members on all the various jurisdictions. And so we can certainly provide a nice and straightforward workspace audit for you. And that's a part of the CG Zest Wellness program. And then in addition to that, for all of you who have tuned into this, as our way of also saying thank you to you and to also hear from you and see your healthy workspaces, is that Tyler and I thought it'd be really nice to offer bonus points, which we sometimes do for the CG Zest Wellness platform, which is powered by Virgin Pulse. And so if you email myself and mention that you tuned in to this webinar, and in addition to that, are able to share any photos of your healthy workspace, and you can see this can include, the indoor physical environment of your healthy workspace and all these other different factors that reflect the concepts Tyler had spoke on. Email me, share with me those photos. I'll know that you attended this webinar, and more than happy to, you can upload 1,000 bonus points to your profile for either this quarter for Q4 2021 or next quarter for Q1 2022. So you can have a little bit of strategy in terms of, do you want the bonus points now or at the beginning of the next year? So that's all our way to say, hey, thanks so much for tuning in. And Tyler and I would love to see your healthy workspace photos.
Absolutely.
And then lastly here, as Tyler alluded to a few times as well, this is one aspect of our CG Zest Wellness program, these webinars, but we also have a number of other aspects through this digital means. And so whether it's our Facebook page, Instagram, email newsletter, podcast, these are all things that we like to do to give back and provide health education in order to complement, whether it be the events or complement the programming done through Virgin Pulse or other types of activities that are done for wellness at your workspace. So we're tying everything together and overall advocating for a healthy lifestyle through the CG Zest Wellness program. So with that said, I'm gonna open it up to Tyler here to share any final thoughts that he might have, if he wants to say any parting thoughts to everyone as we're about to close off this webinar.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to share all that information, and as I said at the beginning, it is a lot of information and a lot to take in just 1 hour, right? So we'll also be sharing this video as well. If you want to go back in and look at specific concepts that you think need a little bit of updating in your own workspace, whether that's in the office or even at home. And another thing too about the WELL building standard is it is a lot for commercial space, but it doesn't just have to be for that either. It is for residential space too. So if there's things that you're wanting to change in your home, it doesn't have to be just your office, right? Whether it's from air or light or any of the concepts we talked about today, these are also things you can apply to your house as well. Okay, thermal comfort obviously being a big one, right? So these are practical everyday things for not just our work, but also for our life. And there's hundreds of features that we can include passively into our everyday life that will help with better outcomes with our overall health going forward.
Well said, Tyler. And everyone, on behalf of the entire CG Zest Wellness team, again, it's fantastic to deliver these webinars. As Tyler mentioned, the recording will be posted on YouTube. And with that said, this concludes the Healthy Workspace webinar. So thank you to all of you for tuning in, and we look forward to communicating with you further on the 2 calls to action that we mentioned. So with that said, everyone, bye for now.
Thanks, everyone.